Test 1, 2, 3. Hey everybody, internet, how's it going? My name's Aaron LeBeau. I'm a developer advocate. Oh no. Ooh, sorry about that. I have volume bleed. I have to test the volume of the stream because I've got a Rodecaster over here that all my audio goes through and stuff, and it's fancy. It allows me to do things like turn myself into a monster if I wanted to. Like how do I do this again? 1 second here.
Hey, I'm a monster right now, so on the stream, you should hear me sound scary.
It's got all these things I really don't use because I'm just a developer, but I also play D&D and Dungeons and Dragons on the side, so I do use it for that. And so the theory would be it needs to be rebooted every couple days. Sometimes it'll say that it's up and running and stuff, and like the Rodecaster Duo will show up in Streamlabs, but no audio comes through it. And the only answer is I reboot the thing, it comes back up, and then all the audio works. So a couple days ago I had a stream, I did, and the volume wasn't working. That was really frustrating and embarrassing because for like 15 minutes on the stream, here I am, because that one stream I didn't test the audios, and that one stream was the stream that was going to be where that was going to happen. So let's not make that mistake again, right? So we've been playing around. So one, happy Thursday for those of you watching. So many of you watch video on demand, so if you're watching on demand, thank you for watching on demand. I keep saying it over again, if you have questions for me, hit me up on Discord. I am more than happy to answer those questions for you. Dev Club is a great community. I hang out over there. I hang out in other places, including Couchbase's Discord. So I'll just kind of shamelessly plug a couple places, I guess, while I'm at it here. So this is Couchbase's Discord. You can always go into any of the mobile channels. I hang out in there. I hang out everywhere. I work for Couchbase. So, you know, if you post anywhere, I'm pretty much, and if you ping me on that. My name is Biozal on there, Biozal. Dev Club is a great place. You can go hang out with some really smart developers, not just me. There's way smarter developers there probably, and you can ask stuff like web development, obviously Kotlin, all the things you want. If you are a .NET developer, you should really be going to Dev Evolution. This is .NET Evolution. This is the place where all the .NET developers, like here's the big Maui one, and if you're doing Maui, you're doing all those kind of things, this is a amazing right here is Uno platform. So if you're asking questions about Uno, here we go. This is where you want to go to talk to people, like-minded people, about your problems, or just to hang out and talk. All those things are awesome, right? So Discord, we're better together. All you developers out there. So if you're looking for a community, there's several that you can get yourself into if you're learning this, or if you're just curious about different things. And of course, just ping me on anywhere on the socials. You can also ping me on the platform formerly known as X, where excuse me, once again, my username is Biozal, Biozal, which is also on the stream here, GitHub/Biozal at Biozal. You can ping me there. Let's see here. We'll like that tweet because Maddie is awesome. Maddie is one of the PMs at Microsoft that works on .NET Maui. Used to be Xamarin. Her and David are amazing people. I've met both of them in real life, and they are both legitly cool people. So let's see here. We've been playing with Uno a little bit here in the past here. And so yesterday on the lunch stream, if you missed it, if you didn't watch the video on demand, if you weren't here in person, I took this Figma just this random Figma here. Well, not a random. I made it. I used their templates. I explained how to do all this yesterday, so I'm not gonna go through that again because we did that yesterday. But I exported out the code. It wrote code for me, and I was skeptical. I am a skeptical person. I'm an old person, so I'm the skeptical because I'm old, and I didn't think it was gonna write that good of code. But folks, if I hit the debugs button here today, we've got a login page working here, man. I mean, it's actually working. It's rendering. So let's do that real quick. The build's taking a few seconds here. So this is also, by the way, updated to .NET 8. .NET 8 shipped. So I put the .NET 8 bits on my machine. So we are now .8ified. So this should be building with the official, not the release candidate, the actual .NET 8 bits. Very cool. Very cool. So this built and succeeded. Not the fastest build time in the world, right? I know all your Swift UI people are like, hey man, I'd like instantly build. Well, it's doing a lot of things. It's building a lot of other platforms for you too, right? That you can run on. And so we have a UI here. We've got a username, a password, and a random image box. We'll take care of that random image here in a little bit. And I told, where we left yesterday was, I know that over in the Uno land, they have this new way they want to do things. Instead of MVVM, they have a new pattern that they're promoting. Am I skeptical on the pattern? No, I'm not skeptical on the pattern. I would say that's probably the wrong word. It's just we already got some patterns, right? I know how to do this, so it's like we're adding another pattern to the mix here. There's nothing wrong with that per se, right? Let's go to Uno and get back to Uno here because we want to take a look at this. I know how MVVM works. I think it's fine. It's a pattern. It's used on most mobile platforms. Like I use MVVM on Android native, use it on iOS native all the time. And Xamarin made it kind of, well, not Xamarin, WPF, believe it or not, is the platform that made that famous. Windows Presentation Framework, the first XAML platform, and Silverlight, shortly after it. And I don't ever remember which one came first, but they were the first platforms that introduced WVVM as a pattern with bindings in one-way and two-way bindings. And Xamarin picked that up, obviously, when Xamarin came out with Xamarin Forms, and it's been like that since. And it's a perfectly fine pattern, to tell you the truth. I find no problems with it. But these guys are, and gals are promoting a different pattern. And so what I'm looking for, it's always hard for me to find their documentation for markup. So I have to go to the main markup page and Google it, and then click here to get to the actual physical part of the documentation that has it. Because it's like somewhere hidden in like this extensions part. And I just never remember it sitting there until I find it again. Okay. And so what ends up happening is that they give you a couple templates that you could use, right? And so you can see here, I have a really interesting thing going on. They have a really interesting thing here. This is where they're saying how the data bindings work, right? So they're saying that you're going to make a model, a view model or a model, and you're going to add the data context to this, right? So once that's data context, that means that you have a pointer to this view model via this VM variable, right? And now you can see here, they're then saying the stack panel, they're also adding the data context to the stack panel, and they're adding a model from the, so there's some kind of model, some kind of data representation inside of this view model that they're going to then expose, and then they're going to take two fields out of that model and bind them to that control. And since it's, I don't see like one way in there, I make the assumption this is a two-way binding. Which is usually how most platforms work. It's two-way by default, and one way if you basically specify one way. What does it mean? Well, that means that anytime the text box changes, you'll know about it. You'll always have the latest version of the text box. This is a totally different way of thinking than like with Redux and state management, where everything's read only, and you have to build a new version of it and this and that. We're not doing state to that way. In the sense is this takes some of that credit away from you. Now, you could still run into state problems, right? I mean, this doesn't solve all the world's problems, but you'll see here, this is their recommendation syntax, is that we have to build something called a data context, and we have to pass the object in. Now, they have this new one here called this like I said, this MVUX, and I don't know anything about this. I just read that this was their recommendation, so this is what I'm reading about, and I'm going to try to implement this today. That's my goal, to see whether or not I can just get some implementation done here. So you can see here, I'm not loading data right now, right? So that's one thing that I'm gonna have to. Their examples are all about loading data. I need to take information from the form and post it, so I don't even need to load data right now. So that's a little bit also their examples really 100% hitting where I need to go. So they give you this kind of little document here of trying to explain like why they want to be able to do this. And so they have some general guidelines. They recommend you use these feeds, right? A feed is stateless. The state is contained only in a message they're going through a given subscription. Data is then expected to be immutable. An update to the data applies a new message with an updated instance. It says as a functional programming, the data is optional. This message contains data, aka some, about the fact that there's nothing. Public feeds are expected to expose a property getters. A caching system enables the reactive framework will then try not to recreate a new feed. So they're basically taking a different approach on this, but it smells a lot like a Redux, like over and Redux specifically in React, or RX, RX.net, which I think is semi-abandonware. I think they're working on that again, but I'm not really sure of the status on that. I know that when I looked at it, they were barely getting .NET 7 support in it, and I'm like, well, world's moved on to 8, so I don't want to put something into my app that is not even going to be compatible with the latest version. So here's where they're showing us the weather service, and this would be a normal way that I'd write probably something. Depending if it's an API versus a database, I would probably have a repository here, but that's the same concept. And you'll see here that they have a record this is really like a model and a weather alert, and then a location service that is going through and getting cities. And these are all async stuff. They don't have async in front of it, but we make the service. And so now what they're saying instead is this is like a wrapper around it. So they're saying here is a feed, an iFeed. So you have an iFeed of the weather info, and the weather info looks like it's a record. They're wrapping weather service, and then I see what they're doing here. So they're saying, I'll give you the weather info back, and just give me this feed, and then get current weather here from whatever context this context. Is this context or is this a cancellation token? Cancellation token. Okay, so, and they're just wrapping around that service then. And then they're saying a signal represents a trigger that can be raised anytime, for instance, when an I command bound to a pull refresh. So they're saying there's something called a signal also. So here they have something called a private signal, and they're saying underscore refresh weather. But really, how does this then do anything other than raise this? This is kind of what I need. I need a signal to tell them that my login button was clicked, right? I need to pass in, or I shouldn't have to pass in. It should know about my username and password if I bind to it. And then I should be able to get a message back to update state based on what happens. So let's read further in here. Well, they just kind of drop it, right? They say a signal could be this, and then they give you an example, but really the example doesn't do anything. It says refresh weather. Here, I get that that's a new signal, but where is this actually being used? Oh, right here. So this service says get current weather and refresh weather. So what does get current weather do? Get current weather, do they give us that? It's just a cancellation token. So they're using this as a cancellation token? No, they pass it in as a cancellation token. So, it's the feed here. So they call the feed and they say, this must be passed to Toad to call it again to update the feed. Is this like a stream? Yeah. This will re-invoke as an async method. So, boy, this is looking like Kotlin coroutines a little bit here. Okay, that's interesting. Not really what I'm looking for either, though, as a pattern. It's the few things I have with this is that one, I have this data and all this stuff, and I have it in a C# library, and I want to use my library both in Maui, which will definitely be MVVM, and this, which is this MVUX. So I need to put a wrapper around it. So I have a very specific way that I've implemented things that works on all platforms, right? Regardless of this model of how you want to interact with it, right? So I need to figure out how to get my stuff that I wrapped using this to work. So let's see here. So in here, they get weather. So what is this then? This feed create. I mean, this is all great, but I need to be able to send a message or something. And really don't care about getting data back from a service right now per se, like in a feed. I just want to be able to call my service. I mean, it looks like this feed stuff would be is like what I'd want to do when I want to listen to getting information back, but I already have a methodology for doing that. So, and they also don't really give you like how to bind this then. I see this example here, but where's the full example of this? Oh, here we go. Let's see, products, and this is all in C#, or all in XAML, not in C#. They have a YouTube example, I guess I could start to take a look at, but I mean, I have a feeling none of them are going to be like the most core fundamental basic of like, I just need to log in, right? I want to log in. I want to send a username and password there. And then I want to wait to get the results back because I have no idea how long that's going to take. Uno has a sample application, two of them that are written, and one's a calculator and one's a YouTube application. I think that the documentation is not really going to give me the answers I'm looking for. So I have a feeling that we're going to be dumpster diving into the example code to take a look and see what's going on here. Because this does use MVUX, right? And so we may be able to use the code, the final code from this repo. So let's find out where this repo is. Okay, you should provide the GitHub link at the top here. I get you're going through the tutorial, but I don't want to write this by hand. I want to just look at the code you already have. And so just having a link to the repo would be a pretty big deal. Oh, it's down at the bottom here. All right, here we go. Also, there's a GitHub icon, man. Just make a GitHub icon with that. Code can be found here. And put the little GitHub icon here or over here, so it just sticks out. That would be helpful. It's on the page, so I can't complain. It just, I'm scanning really quickly because I only have an hour for my lunch stream and I'm trying to get something done. Let's take a look at here at, yeah, see, they have a very interesting way of how they're doing this. So they're using something here called just like models here. You can see some main models. So let's take a look here. So he just says that this is a partial record. This is going to get, I remember now, this is going to get like ridiculous already because this partial record goes to another record that then kind of goes through and does this. Now, just from the browser, I can't figure out this without pulling this code down and bringing it into an IDE and try to figure out like what's going on because we have so much code separation here. And so now we have to try to figure out like, okay, this is a partial class, which means somewhere in here, there's another version of this that probably has the rest of the implementation. But where it is, I don't know. Boy. So when I write sample applications, I try not to do this as much as possible because the fact that it just gets into the point where you can't read the code quickly. And a lot of times we have somebody called, like at CodeChase, we have sales engineers, right? And they're engineers that are experts at mobile. They just want to know where the code is really fast. And so the more complicated I make the code, the more hard it's going to be for them to find anything. So I try to keep it the kiss simple here. Let me just open up this code in GitHub and see in Visual Studio Code, just using the period from the repo. This is a feature that's been around for quite a while, and see whether or not I can just try to find find what the heck's going on with this. So my understanding then is, once again, that this is in the YouTube let me make this bigger so you guys can all see too. I'm realizing that that's probably too small. Now you guys can see. So I hit the period on the repo and it instantly brought this up. And now I'm going to get a better way of looking at this, right? So if we look at the presentation, we have this main model, but it is a public record. So let's go to definition and see if we can find any other definitions of main model. And no, and we're not really finding, this is probably not going to be all that much more helpful. I have no doubt that this whole thing, there's something going on here that we're just not seeing. That, first of all, if you don't have code in multiple spots, then you don't need to use partial record. That tells me there's more crap somewhere else. Oh, that's simple calculator. I don't care about that either. Yeah, this is even more complicated because there's multiple repos in here. Oh, for turd sakes. Oh. And this is down to where I just have to pull the code and open it up yet another editor window. I mean, there's just no other way around this. If I want to use this code, for example. So let's see here. I think I do have this pulled down, but I don't remember. Let's go look and see if I have it on my computer. Let's see here. I have the Uno Hello, which was the first thing I built just to try to see whether or not I could get Uno working. Uno Check is their source code for their check utility, which I found a couple defects with on the Mac. So I was looking at whether or not I could fix them. And the answer is the way that they build it, I just can't get a way to build it without using Mac, or on Mac. It's just not possible. You have to, it looks like they've kind of developed this thing on Windows with Visual Studio, or, you know, whatever editor that is. And it's just nothing works in Mac with Writer with it. NPM, boy, I'm thinking about work here right now. Let's see here. We want to do what? We want to get clone Uno samples. I'll take a second, and then we'll have to open up Writer in another window and take a look and see if we can see like what the heck is going on here. So let's go file, open. Oh, don't. Why is Writer not wanting to cooperate now? It's stuck on like file open, even though I clicked something else. And now it's stuck. Oh, come on, really? Is Writer just like broke right now? Yeah. Writer is broke. Wait, oh wait, no, it's back. All right, woo, wait, no, that's the Finder. Writer. No, Writer is broken. Awesome. Force quit. I'm using early preview version. I know you're probably saying, well, you were using early preview version. You probably deserve this, right? This all this pain and misery. Well, I'm running .NET 8, and .NET 8 is got the best support in the early preview version because they haven't shipped support for that yet. Even though .NET 8's been in development for like a year and been in at least 3 release candidates. So yeah. Let's go to Uno inventory because we do want to have that open, but then we want to go to file and open up another project in our solution. We want to look at these samples. So Uno samples. We want to look at this player one. New window. A new window is always kind of scary in Writer because it puts a tab and then you can kind of forget what tab you're on. I find this absolutely not a great UI. So what I usually do is just make it a separate floating window so that I know for a fact I'm in this one versus the other one, to each their own on that. So let's take a look here now at the, again, business objects as we're kind of looking through this to understand like what's going on here. So presentation, we know we have a main model and a main page, right? If we look here, I'm guessing that it's binding to bindable main model. Shit, I don't even know what that is. We'll have to try to wrap around where that's even coming from, a bindable main model. So there's a lot of inheritance going on here, and trying to ravel behind like what this. Go to. No, I want to go to the symbols for this. Go to type decoration. Oh, so this is a class. Holy crapolas here. And presentation. I don't see this here. YouTube presentation, main model, binding G. Is this some kind of generated thing here? I have a feeling this is generated code. Yep. So somehow it's making code generation. Great. Their documentation doesn't explain any of this. They give you like the really easy example, and then you get into here and it's kind of a mess. How do I make one of these bindable things, right? I know that I have a main model, right? And here's my main model. And this is a partial, which means I have to believe that there's somewhere else. Let's find out where the other spot of this is. Is this just more code generation? That's why they use like partial records? Yeah. Man. They don't give you any of this when they give you the general guidelines in how feeds and stuff work. I don't see anything in here but like making a like having to make like a certain type of way in order to get code generation to work in this and that. When subscribing to a state, the current load is going to be replayed. So let's see. They have an I state. So this is what I expect is this, is that I need to make a couple of these states here. Can you bind to a state then? Man, I really wish that they had this where it's not just this, that they show the C# code and they explain like how all this is supposed to work together, because this is just a bunch of like random ideas that really don't concurrently add together. As a developer, right? I'm looking at this going, okay, you're saying state. So I'm making the assumption of like, wait, what? Right here, they're saying then you do a value task with a cancellation token to get the current city and then update it. And then when you want to set it, this seems like it's so much code to do something so simple. Wow. Yeah, I think this is really super complicated. And the directions really, they're trying to explain like state, like in a React document. If I were explaining state, I'd have here's my JSX code, here's how I bind it into UI, here's it up here. This is like a full example. Instead, here, it's all concept with no like really like, hey, this is how you do it. And the application is so complicated that they've built that you just can't even follow a simple pattern of like, here's a page example. This is kind of like the exact opposite thing of what I do when I build examples and I build things for like as a developer advocate at Couchbase. I don't build super complicated apps because then people are trying to learn can't learn. You want them to focus on the one thing that they're trying to do. If you try to have them learn like 12 things at once, they're never going to do it. You want to focus on like one clear thing and only thing, right? I'll give you an example here of this, which is really kind of interesting. So here's the, I'm going to show you some Android stuff here. So here's my learning path for Android, right? I expect some Android developers to have some core basic things of like they know what a view model is. I'm not gonna get them into like the hardness of that, right? But I tried to make everything repeatable, so it's all the same regardless of how you're looking at it. But let's take a look here. If I'm a UI developer and I'm trying to learn Couchbase Lite, and I'm just looking at the very first page, which is the login page, right? I've got login and login view model together. They're very simple, right? This should be super easy. There should be like, you shouldn't have to understand hardly anything whatsoever on this. Let's just go to code only. You'll see here that this is Jetpack Compose, so it's pretty easy. We got a view. We got a bunch of crap we're importing in. We're taking our view model in. Okay, this makes pretty much sense. There is a onLogin success. That's an event that may happen, and if that happens, we're gonna do something with it. And then we take in a view model. We observe those as state, and then here's our UI code. Okay, so if I'm teaching somebody state, well, right here it is. I mean, we're reserving state. Here's our UI code for it. We can see here that this is our wrapper around it to get our theming, that kind of stuff. We build the actual login window. This is called state uplifting in Jetpack Compose, which is really, really popular. You'll see here then I just have a login window. We get the context, we throw in our username and password stuff, and this is just our code. If you want to see how it binds, it's all right there. Really pretty easy to do. Our login view model is pretty basic. It's just a regular, really generic view model. It takes in a couple services and inherits it just from the standard Android view model. This is using live data. And the reason for that, I wanted to give examples of both using live data and not live data. And since this has nothing to do with databases, I felt that that wasn't really all that big of a deal to basically show both, mutable data and then using the new state management stuff that's built in. Live data is kind of an old thing that's been around for a while. But if I go to projects, that's the very next thing that comes up. So I can go into the project list view. I just happen to know this code that this is the very next view that comes up. And once again, we have a drawer. So we're going to bring in some stuff to scaffold this page because we have a drawer and you can navigate to different places. But really when it comes down to it, it looks like I haven't updated the Gradles because it's saying that it needs a sync Gradle. That's why all this stuff is red. Basically just wrap around a page around this thing. Here's my project list. And then here's the more core basic things in the world, man. It just takes a list of projects. It's that simple. I mean, Jetpack Compose is pretty great from that standpoint. Notice there's no word view model or anything on here. The view model is done up here. The view model passes it in, and then it's up to, you don't need it again. It's very simple. And of course, this is collected as a flow, which is coroutines. And that means our view model code is also pretty basic. Our view model, very small amount of code here. We basically have a flow that we're getting from a repository because it's a database, and we just load that data into a coroutine flow, and then we just make that thing available via the database. The biggest, hardest thing in here is that you have to understand enough to understand scope, to understand whether or not this needs to be ran in the scope of what we call the IO scope. You'll see here, view model launch dispatcher IO. And that has to do with anytime you do stuff that talks to the disk, you have to guarantee that you are not running on the main thread, on a secondary thread, which means our repository's job, because we don't have it here, our repository better be not using the main thread, right? It should be using the IO thread. And we could actually check that. We could go into projects and we can go into the project repository database here for the implementation. And we should see that if we go to, what call were we making here? We were making a call to get documents, right? So the get documents is core basic one. we better find that in here that there is a at some point in time in here, this should go through and make sure that it runs on not the main thread right here. So you see here, flow on dispatcher IO. What this does is says when we make the flow for it, run all this crap on the IO thread instead of the main thread, which means we ain't gonna lock our program up. And all this, you can see all this comments and stuff. This is links to a document that I wrote that links and looks at this code. And so I tell people in the documentation, reference comment item number 1 here on this file. And then I can explain to them why this code's laid out in a way. By doing that, it just makes it super easy because I can make an MD file that actually explains each one of those things and what it's doing and why it's doing in a certain order. Also, you can see there's just a ton of comments in here that explains to people if they're new to it, like this is how flows work, this is what you have to worry about. Because some people don't even know what a flow is, right? They're Android developers, maybe they're new to it. I hope not, because flows are kind of like a standard way to do things. But you'll see here, I have comments all over the place, but it's a very simple application that would work in an enterprise, but also is ridiculously simple. There's no separating code all over the damn place. And everything should be like in a quick spot to find it, right? So if you look here, I did this based on features. And the reason for that is so that it wasn't hard to find. Like everything where the view, here's the view model for it. They're in the same folder together. And it's just for making it easier for the developer to find stuff without jumping around into a thousand different places, right? This is my Jetpack Composed Learning path I did at Couchbase. I spend a lot of time on Android. I know it probably better than most platforms. It's a great platform, don't get me wrong, for people that are just trying to build Android applications. But back to here, I think my problem is this documentation is really kind of fragmented, and then I don't see in the app where I'm going to get like a simple example that just shows me state in action on a very simple screen that shows me like why would you use this together, like I would in a React documentation example, because this is just showing me some concepts. But where is this like in a page? How do I bind this? How do I make this like in a usable example that I could throw on somewhere? And I just don't see that here, which now means I'm back to here to try to figure out like how do I get the syntax for binding. I understand what state management is. And most developers do, especially if they're React or something else. I understand that. What I'm trying to understand is what is your syntax version of this in order to do this and get this bind to some kind of UI component, right? That is the thing that is missing from here that you have opinion on, but you then say uses an application. So let's see here. So once again, this looks like it's XAML. And I'm using C#. So, man. So let's see here, refreshing data. It just basically says build. So this is some kind of reactive UI thing that they're calling into reference. So anytime you see this example, that means they're referencing a class basically from this library. And then they're saying that there's some kind of feed. So this is almost like a feed view of a type T of yeah, this is super hard to convert to their C# syntax when it's new and not out there. Really wish they would give these examples in like their C# markup. Yeah. Boy. Folks, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on this right now. I think that this is just a lot, right, to go into. It's like the C# markup's really cool, but the documentation for any of this other stuff like MVX has no examples of it. The MVX stuff is so high level theory, and there's just no easy concrete example of like, okay, here's a state thing that then goes in and puts it into the C# markup to get it working. I can't co-pilot this thing because this is so new that there's no co-pilot. And the only example I have is this YouTube example, which tearing apart the code to understand like how it works is ridiculously complicated. They have all these things that partial records, all these different things of like, you know, okay, I get it. Here's a main page and here's a main model. I make the assumption these two things are related together, but what the hell's a bindable view model and where did this come from? And how do I make one of those if I want to make one of those, right? And I go back here and I right click on it and say, show, you know, go to this thing. Hey, just give me where this is declared. Well, it's declared here. Okay, well then let's go to find the base symbols for this thing. And this is some kind of like code generated thing. And so it's like, Well, then what is that and how does that work? How does it know that bindable main model is a main model? Where's the mapping to this? Usually there's a like a T thing where we, in generics we do that. So in C sharp, yeah, this is just very hard to read as this. I've been doing C sharp for God, way too long. I'm sure this code to the person that wrote it makes absolutely sense because they're at Uno and they know Uno really well. But they shouldn't be writing for themselves or how they would write it. They should be writing something that's easy to read that a developer that doesn't know Uno can actually try to understand, or at least have some comments of like, hey, where's the comment of like how bindable, how did this become that? And all I can see here is code generation, generate code here. And it looks like there's some kind of annotation here. Now I see this. Wait, I'm hovering over this. Some kind of annotation happens in bindable view model base. There's some kind of bindable view model base. Where the hell is that thing at? Man, this thing is just so where the hell is that at? It's not in here. Would they have it in here? No. That's just, I know not to touch that project. Yeah. So it's no doubt that this thing somehow, there is some kind of bindable main model. And namespace YouTube's presentation. I'm in YouTube presentation. It's like right here. So is this like some kind of partial class that's somewhere else that's in this code that I just can't see? Let's go into main model and see. And this thing's really small. Where's this base at then? There's shell model, video details. I mean, that actually is pretty easy code to read. That's not bad. And this is the video details page. I guess I'm just super confused, like how they are getting all this to work with this bindings using this thing here, this bindable main model. I see main model here, but I just don't see how they're doing that. This stuff looks cool by theory, but and here's a state thing. So they have a state thing here, right? So that's exactly what I'd be looking for. Like, right, I need a state for username and password. This would totally make sense to me. I would basically stating this would be like, okay, this object here, this main model owns this. And the value provider, they're just setting it to a default value, I would assume here. I think you could probably just have that. I'm assuming you could just have that be the blank string empty, maybe. And then when they search, they must pull this out, right? They're going to get this search term. Yeah, so look here, they're saying here where search term. And so they're saying video results, they're going to use the state variable from search term, and then they're going to do a link statement on it. And then they're doing a select paginated by cursor. Get page. So this must be some kind of extension method that's eventually added on to search term, because search term is just a freaking... Wait, is this more code generated shit. Come on. Yeah, I mean, it's like at this point in time, no really clear answer like how this code generation stuff works. This is not great. I don't think this is entertaining to watch somebody try to stream either, to tell you the truth, of trying to figure this out based on just a bunch of code that is kind of has this code generation in. And the documentation I don't think is good enough for me right now to be able to say, I understand this state variable. I understand how to bind it to something in a UI in the C# markup, and I understand how to put it on a page. That doesn't exist in this documentation today. The usage in the applications are super complicated from the standpoint of like partial records. Why are we using partial records? There has to be bits and pieces somewhere else. I don't know where they are. There's no like reason. It doesn't say here why I should be using partial records. So I don't know the answer to that. I think this is hard for somebody to pick up that is maybe has Xamarin background but doesn't understand any of this, because that's me. I've got Xamarin background. I know how MVVM works. I've shipped a lot of MVVM apps in my time, but all this stuff is relatively complicated to me compared to what I do either when I write code the way I write it, or the Android native and the Swift UI stuff that I've been doing in the past on stream. I think we might move away from doing the Uno example, see if I can't talk to them about where's some better documentation or some videos that explain this better. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to move back to doing the Maui version of this instead, because Maui is, one, just shipped in 8, and it's actually pretty easy. I know XAML really well, and well, I wouldn't say really well. I don't know its version of XAML really well, but it can't be hard. So I think what we're going to do is that. I think we're going to switch over and try to get Maui working instead of Uno. And then we'll make sure that we have all of our stuff here, like in a separate library, so that if I can find some stuff, like some better ways of maybe somebody explaining some stuff to me, then I'll try to do the Uno part. But right now, that's I just think that that's frustrating. And somebody watching a 47-minute stream of somebody just looking at documentation and not being able to like understand or comprehend why documentation is fragmented from like the real goal, which is they're trying to introduce like these concepts of how to get things and then also bring them up in the UI, but there's nothing that kind of puts that together. That's an issue. So it's constructive feedback, right? And I only have an hour a day to do this, so I don't have like days and weeks on it. So I need to go find, maybe there's a video, and if there's not, then maybe they can explain it to me and I'll make a video on it. But either way, I feel like there's a big gap here on how to do Uno. And between the C# markup, how to do the bindings, and how to use this MV UX thing that they're saying to do, I don't think there's a great thing that's explaining all that together and how all these little tiny pieces of the puzzle fit together. But Maui's pretty easy. Let's go through and make sure that works. And that's pretty easy for us to get into and do some cool stuff. I think we do want to use Shell. I did a Xamarin Shell application, Xamarin Forms application in Shell a while back. Shell kind of is semi-magical. David, if you're watching this from Xamarin or from Microsoft, I told David I would never use Shell a long time ago because I just felt like it was doing too much for me, and it's like I didn't have the flexibility I needed. But then I started using Shell, and I found, okay, this is pretty awesome. It'll do like the hamburger menu for you and all that kind of stuff. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So I'm gonna make some assumptions that I can do the same concepts I did before in XAML here and have this working pretty fast from that standpoint, right? And I mean, this looks a little bit like Dart. And Flutter, but it's all right. It's not my favorite, I'll be honest with you. I'm just not a fan of like HTML, this markup style of doing things. I find that I can't put a breakpoint in here that kind of stinks. Although I did see at .NET Conf that in Visual Studio for Windows, they have this like live viewer where you can see your XAML controls live. You can see what's in memory live, so you'll know on the call stack exactly what's happening as you're debugging your app. You can hover on any of the components as they're debugging, and it'll show you like what the value is in memory. It's not a full debugger, like adding a breakpoint and stuff, but that did look like it would alleviate some of my biggest pain points in XAML, which is it's a serialization thing. They have to serialize it and hydrate into memory, but once it's hydrated into memory, you can't see like why the serializer didn't work. You can't see the bug here. You can't put a breakpoint and say, oh, I forgot, some field here that it doesn't know how to check and see whether or not you have the right XAML in there or not. And that's always been my problem in the past with XAML, is that, somebody will go through it and make a syntax here, and the IDE doesn't pick up that it's a syntax error and like the binding, because they're like strings, for example. And then there's no way to debug that. And so now you're just trying to go through and try to figure out like, how do I even figure out like what string in this binding command that I gave it is like right here, like clicked is on counter clicked, right? That's a method that it's calling here. And so that would be in the back end here. Here's the method it maps to. In the IDEs back in the day, that it wouldn't know this. And so if I typed in like click here, it wouldn't know to tell me that method is not the right method. Now, it's gotten better. The IDEs now know this, but in 2016, let me tell you, they didn't. And this was so frustrating when I was using XAML with Xamarin Forms back in the old days. So I think that's what we're going to do, sir. So I think tomorrow's lunch stream, I'm going to get the login XAML working off stream. Or at least I'm going to get the UI up and running and stuff so that it works, and then we could start taking a look like how do we map it in and get the binding and stuff working with MVVM. Using I already have a service here that runs that does this mock authentication service. It's using channels. Channels is a perfectly fine way of doing things. It's thread safe for the most part if you know what you're doing. It's part of Threads in C#. It's a feature I don't feel like most people know about. It's like a pub sub is maybe the best way to describe it. Way of subscribing for like, hey, I need to know when something happens, but I don't know how long it's going to take. Async can kind of do that, but this is a different way of thinking about it, where I can just set it and forget it, and then eventually something will happen, and I'll deal with it when it happened. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at trying to get authentication working and the UI stuff tomorrow. I think that's a good place to end the stream for today, because I think we spent a little bit too much time on this, trying to figure out this UNO documentation. I just don't think that's going to happen right now. So we'll move over to Maui and take a look at that. I know David over on the Maui team, PM over there, has got a lot of real great examples on this, but really, the one advantage to Maui is that it's pretty basic. I mean, I know it from Xamarin Forms, and it's pretty close to Xamarin Forms, so I should be able to hack my way through building something pretty quickly here. So let's do that. All right, folks. I appreciate for those that are watching on the stream. I apologize, but I think we'll take a look at Maui tomorrow and see what we can do with it, and see if we can get at least our app up and running, listing some data, do some things that are actually useful in the app. So take care and be kind to one another there. And